everybody, and welcome to Taking Control, the ADHD podcast on rashpixel.fm. I'm Pete Wright, and that right there, excited for a new digital episode,
Woohoo!
is Nikki Kinzer.
Hello, everyone.
Yay!
Hello, Pete Wright. Yay!
Go digital!
I know. I'm ready to learn.
We're talking about educational tools, things to make the tech that you can use to make going back to school easier and more efficient if you spend just a little time to learn it. So I'm very excited about this. First, before we dig in, head over to TakeControlADHD.com, get to know us a little bit better, and listen to the show right on the website. Subscribe for free to the mailing list, and make sure you don't miss a single episode. Connect with us, as always, on Twitter and Facebook. We love hearing from you, particularly this episode. Let us know what tools and tech you're using to make your school adventure that much easier. And call us 503-664-4ADD, 664-4ADD.
Don't be shy. Call.
Don't be
Leave
shy.
a message.
That's
Even
right.
if you don't want your message online or on the air, you can still leave one and we'll answer your questions.
Right. That's it. Mm-hmm. We'd love to hear it. All right. Okay. So, school tech. School tech. I went round and round and trying to figure out how to address the idea of technology in the classroom. And because as a faculty member, as an instructor at a university, I see a lot of technology, and it's fun. It's fun to see what other students are using and to see where technology is sort of moving in the classroom. You see these trends where certain new tech will spike, and then eventually it'll either wear off or people get frustrated and realize it doesn't work the way they want it, and then it'll eventually kind of normalize into some generic thing for a year or two, and then spike again. So it's fun. It's a little laboratory.
You know what amazes me? I just have to say, I don't think that I'm old. I really don't. I look at myself and I think I'm young. I'm not really that young, but I'm not that old. But it amazes me when I think about when I was in college that no one had technology. We had a computer lab. So if you wanted to type a paper or have a paper in a Word document, you had to go to the computer lab at the library, and they were the old fashioned, computers that were green lettering,
Oh yeah. With the monochrome screen.
Yeah,
and you would handwrite your paper in a spiral notebook. And so you'd go to the computer lab on finals week, and you would see all of the computers, everybody's lined up at the computers, and they'd have stacks of paper, of handwritten term papers ripped out of their spiral notebook. So you'd have all the little paper confetti that's kind of torn and paper dust, and it would all be stacked because they put the computers too close together. So you'd stack up your paper. It would all kind of bend on top of the mouse that you'd be using. It was a mess. It was a nightmare. How did we survive?
How did we survive? And how did we survive without phones, iPads? I mean, it's crazy to me.
I was thinking about it. When I was in college, we had just crested the wave of, you know what I could do? I could take a portable cassette recorder and put it in the classroom and record lectures on cassette. That was the newest thing that I knew.
That. Yeah. I had a cassette player that I recorded lectures on. Yep. Carried it with me.
Yep, you carry it with you.
Rewound, fast forward, pause, rewound, fast forward,
tapes,
pause.
They became valuable, right? If you were the person who recorded the lectures, you had friends who thought really highly of you.
Yeah.
Friends who probably didn't go to class.
It's crazy.
Oh, those were the days.
So on a side note, because I know you're talking about technology, and this is a completely different type of tech. Well, it's still technology, but it's about safety technology. And I thought I was watching the Today Show yesterday, and they had 3 apps that they shared about safety, and it was specific to college campuses, but it could be for anybody, right? If you're walking from place to place at nighttime or whatever. But they're great safety apps, and so. And I won't go through each of them because I don't know exactly what they were called, but we can put them in the show notes anyway because they were really good and it caught my attention. As I was making lunches for my kids, I actually stopped and looked at it and I thought, oh my gosh, what a great thing to have as a young woman, young man walking in the middle of the night or walking from a late class home. And it's kind of nerve wracking to be able to have that app at your hands and know that, you could get help immediately or people are watching out for you. These things were crazy good. So I will put that on the show notes so that people can see that segment because it really is great. I mean, talk about putting technology in the spotlight or shine. What am I saying, Pete?
Putting a spotlight on technology.
Putting a spotlight, yeah.
That's
good. That's really positive. Not that it's not positive in the first place, but man, I wish I had these when I was in college.
Totally. I think we sort of undersell. It makes me think of that scene in Pitch Perfect. And you saw Pitch Perfect, right?
It's been a while, but yeah, I've seen it.
She shows up to school, and the girl comes up to her and says, "Here's your university rape whistle. Remember, don't blow it unless it's happening." And it just made me cringe because I was watching that with my daughter, and she's like, "What's that all about?" It's like, "Oh, honey, let's talk about safety on campus."
Yeah. So anyway, not to deter you from what you're going to talk about today, but I just wanted to bring that up because I thought it was good info.
It is great info. And, I would pass on another link from Sean Blanc's fantastic newsletter. The Fight Spot came out this morning, and he posted this new article on his website called Visualizing Your Ideal Workspace. And I'll put that in the show notes. I loved this piece. It just hit. I haven't even finished reading it because it's kind of long and really, really introspective. But it is a beautiful sort of treatise on how you work. And if you really walk through, what is your really, really beautifully articulated vision of how you would work best? I think it's a really great exercise to go through as a new student when you start, seeking out your best places to work. And in Sean's case, he says, my list is a huge, huge tabletop, 150 square feet big, 5 feet deep and 30 feet wide. It has to be big because it has multiple spaces on it. One area for a computer and keyboard, another for spreading out books and notebooks for research, and still enough space left over so that there's a clean space somewhere. In short, big enough to spread out without taking over everything. And I love the idea, when you think about what's your ideal space look like, 150 square foot table is not what would have come to mind without really kind of going through the exercise. We usually we take what we're given. You're issued a desk, you're issued a cubicle. But I love this idea of thinking about the space that we inhabit. So I'll put that in the show notes too. It's a great
sounds
one.
Great. I'll have to check it out.
I approach this with from a couple of different directions. Briefly, I want to talk about out of class stuff. We talked a little bit about finding a great place to study last week. Where can you go to find peace to study? And one of the things we talked about was using a good set of headphones to mute the surrounding environment. What if your place happens to be a coffee shop, and there's a lot to be said for the coffee shop vibe, and the white noise that's created by the sound around you and conversations around you that can stimulate just what you need in your brain to allow you to focus on what's going on. For me, that works really well. I don't, I sometimes go to a coffee shop with no headphones at all, just because the ambient sound is really good for triggering my focus vibe, when I really get started. But sometimes when you go to a busy coffee shop in an area that is very popular with your friends, it's hard to focus because they keep coming up and talking to you.
Oh, sure.
So, I have this set of headphones, very cheap, the Sony MDR ZX100 over-the-ear headphones. They're big cones, right? They're not the in-ear kind. And they do two things. First of all, they do exactly what we want them to do. They mute the sound just a little bit, even if you're not listening to anything in them. They don't even have to be plugged in. If you do plug them into your phone, listen to some music softly, they do an admirable job of getting sound into your head, right? They're not terrible headphones. They're cheap, but they're not cheaply made. They're really good headphones. Don't go spend $200 on Beats headphones. Don't do that anyway, because they're not great headphones. But don't do it for this purpose, right? Spend your $15 on these little headphones and they serve this secondary purpose of when your friends see you with these cones on your head, they're less likely to bug you.
Totally.
Right?
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, it's like a flag that says "Do not disturb." Right. That's what these big headphones are. And so,
it's like shutting the door to your office. It's
absolutely. Okay, so that's number one. Find some good headphones. Number two, get good at dictation. And there are two kinds of dictation I want to talk about. First of all, is the kind of automated assistance that we have at our beck and call right now. If you have an Android phone or an Apple iPhone, you have access to OK Google on Android and Siri with iOS. Both of these automated assistants allow you to do really, really wonderful things that help you be more efficient when you're on the go. And when you're busy, you need to have a way to trust that you're getting what you need documented right away. Things like adding reminders. Siri, remind me to do that thing right there when I get home. Or, Siri, add pickled herring to my grocery list, while you're running across campus, whatever your need may be. Both of these services have commands that you may not know about. They are growing, it seems, daily in their facility with interacting with your life. And so I would strongly encourage you to visit the links we put in the website for OK Google commands and Siri commands and spend a few minutes just acclimating yourself to what you can do with these things. Both of them do some really wonderful integration with your calendar that I have been exploring a lot of late. If you are the kind of person to put destinations, put your addresses in your calendar of your appointments, like going to the doctor and actually putting the doctor's address in the calendar, then they will give you these proactive reminders. And so I'll get this thing that says, hey, traffic is light right now. You can leave as late as 1:40 to get to your appointment by 2.
Wow, that's cool.
It's really great. I mean, in terms of kind of managing your time without having to think about it, really, really great set of things. So I would definitely recommend to get to know the technology you're carrying in your pocket, whether it's Android or iOS, and get better at it because it will make your life easier. Now, the second part of dictation is actually dictating to write. And this is harder to do because it takes practice. Right? You think that you just want to sit down and say, okay, computer, here's what I want you to say, and that it will just write magically what you put on the screen. And both or all of the major platforms offer the ability to do this. In some cases right out of the box. You don't even need an extra tool. On the Mac, you can just double tap the function key on the latest versions of the Mac operating system with your cursor in any text field, and you can start talking, and it will dictate what you say, just like Siri does on your phone, which is incredibly useful when you're trying to dictate a long document. And so you can write your papers, you can write you can write notes, reminders, emails, whatever you want to do, you can write. You can get even more advanced applications like Dragon Naturally Speaking for Windows or Mac, and that offers some incredibly rich tools for dictating on the Mac. If you're dealing with any sort of repetitive stress injury on your wrists, dictation is incredibly powerful and useful for you. But I find if I am struggling to get ideas out of my head, sometimes it's the connection between fingers and keyboard that are giving me trouble. And if I could just say it, if I could just get it out there so that I could read what's in my head, it's easier for me to go back and edit something that's already out there than it is for me to get it out there in the first place by typing it. In some cases, it's just the opposite, right? In some cases, I can't talk fast enough to get the idea out of my head, and I need the brakes that are applied by the speed of my own typing to actually be able to really focus. And so you kind of have to go both ways. But I've been using dictation a lot for the last couple of years, and I find it really useful. So I recommend that.
So could you use these... could you do this like if you're in the car and you have an idea and you want to capture it, and could you use this for that too? Well,
I'm glad you asked that. So when you're on the go, you're in the car and you use, if you just have a quick idea like, or something that remind me to do something like this, right? You can say that to, for example, Siri, and say, Siri, remind me to do this thing, and get your idea out there. It's like one sentence, and then it automatically is added to your reminders list. And you can even say something like, remind me to write up this paragraph and send this email to such and such when I get home. And the Siri knows where your home is. So as soon as you open the garage door, you pull into your house, you get a little alert on your phone that reminds you the thing you were thinking about. So that's incredibly useful. Now, if you have a longer idea, sometimes dictation on the go in particular is tough because you have ambient noise, you're kind of on the phone, you hear the car noise, if your car is kind of loud or you have a window open, whatever. Sometimes the dictation is not all that accurate, and you just need to muse for a little bit. I find myself, sometimes I just need to talk, and I don't want it to dictate. I don't want it to stop. Particularly when you're on the go, you can only dictate a sentence or two before Siri says, wait a minute, I got to go talk to the server and translate all this into text. So I use an app called Dictate Plus, and it is a really useful app. It just allows you, it's like a connected recorder, right? It's that cassette recorder we were talking about that allows you to simply turn it on, press record a lecture or meeting or even just a quick note, and when you're done, you can automatically run it through a workflow that will say add a title to it, drop it into a Dropbox folder, which will automatically sync to your Dropbox account, and then when you get home, you open up your Dropbox folder, and right there in your little dictation inbox is the thing that you just said in the car a few minutes ago.
Okay, so that's helpful because I was thinking, I'll listen to podcasts a lot in the car, right? Uh-huh. And you'll get an idea or you want to capture something. And so I'm writing it, on a little piece of receipt paper that I found in my console, and I'm trying to, you know what I mean? It's like, it's stressful. And so this would work. One
of the coolest things about iOS 9, which just released, and you may have seen an alert pop up on your phone. iOS 9 just came out last week, and they've integrated a new set of sort of deep linking tools. And I won't go into too much depth there, but one of the cool pieces of this new kind of way the operating system works on your phone is that while you're listening to the podcast, you can hold down the home button and say, Siri, remind me about this later. And Siri knows what you're doing right now. And so it'll put a link to what you are doing at the time in a reminder and save that for you.
The link of the podcast?
The link to the podcast, yeah.
Oh, interesting.
To where you are in the podcast. So that's a kind of a useful tool. It hasn't been implemented by all of the podcast app manufacturers yet, but in many of them it is, and so you can start kind of playing around with how, and this is another reminder. Go look at the Siri commands that you can use because those kinds of things get surfaced in that list. So super
interesting.
Fun. Yeah. Now, I really like Dictate Plus because it allows you to record and do things with longer sessions, right? So if you have long meetings or long course lectures, you just put your phone down and turn it on and hit record, and you're recording the whole thing. When you're done, you can export it and have it automatically export up to Dropbox or Box.net or Google Drive or iCloud Drive or OneDrive, whatever your tool of choice. You can even set up, custom FTP or SFTP folders, if you're familiar with those. Very, 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 very useful. I have set up a number of clients actually who are, therapists or doctors who record their sessions for their clients, and they use it as a way to get these things to their clients. A very, very useful tool and well integrated with sharing services. So, yeah. Okay, so that's Dictate Plus. Check that out. Now, what about when you're in class? This gets to, this whole concept around digital note-taking, right? And we've talked about digital note-taking because we've talked about the LiveScribe line of pens. And it's,
Was that last year?
Yeah, it was last year. It was a while ago.
It was around the back to school stuff too.
Yeah. I think we really focused on that. So I think if you're interested in more detail about LiveScribe, check that out. Generally the tools, the way I think about digital note taking, and I think we're going to talk more about note taking next week, right?
Next week is going to be more about how to study correctly.
Okay. All right. Well, some of this it gets into how you take notes, right? Because some of these apps are really specific for how your mind works with notes. And so, Beth Holland came up with the 4 S's of digital note taking, right? And it's a way to think about the tools that you use. Are they going to meet your needs? The 4 S's are support, save, search, and share, right?
Ooh, like that. Mm-hmm.
So first of all, do they support you? Are you able to make use of multi-sense input? in some note-taking cases, do you record audio in line with your notes? The LiveScribe is one tool that does this. So it records the lecture that you are taking notes on while you are taking notes with the Smart Pen and Smart Paper, so that later you can go back and scrub through your written notes and jump directly to the portion of the audio of that place where you were taking notes, right? So it's really, really useful in that. So support. Save. Does it allow you to instantly save your notes, the notes that you took, in another format, or back up your notes in a way that you don't lose them in the future, right? Does it allow you to search? Do you have the ability to keyword and tag your notes so that you can search and find them later? And does it allow you to share them? Does it allow you to collaborate with others using the notes that you took, using, say, Google Drive or Evernote, that kind of a thing? So support, save, search, and share. I like having that. Yeah, I like having it in the kind of the back of my mind. And now we have just the straight up hardware, right? So I don't know, the stylus. We start with the stylus because, we've had the stylus for a long time. It's the plastic tool that some are smarter than others that allows you to write directly on your screen. Windows has had the ability to buy a computer that you can write on, like a convertible sort of hybrid that you can write on for a long time. And so if you I think the ThinkPads were really solid with this particular technology. The Surface Pro 3 is one that I think is worlds better than the past iterations of it. But they're still a little bit wonky. And the reason they're wonky, and I'm talking about, both anything where you're writing directly on the screen, whether you're using like the Adonit Jot Touch or the Pencil by 53 or the Bamboo Stylus, all of these things are wonky because they're too slow, in my experience. They are way too slow and fiddly. So you sit down to write on your iPad or write on your screen, and you're writing as fast as you can, and suddenly something happens. There's a memory allocation error, and the pen stroke slows down, and now you're fiddling with the connection, and by the time you get all the fiddliness and wonkiness worked out, you've missed the concept completely. The instructor has moved on, and you're lost, right?
Yeah.
And there's nothing worse as an instructor than hearing somebody who's dutifully taking notes on their iPads, and they say, wait a minute, I missed that last thing. Because I know why they missed that last thing, right? They missed that last thing because they were fiddling with the damn stylus, and it makes me crazy. It makes me absolutely crazy. So that's why I come back to these digital pens, right? Pens that write on real paper, with real ink, even though they are digitizing, because I'm a huge fan of digital notes. I really am. It's just a matter of how you get the digital notes into the device. And so, the LiveScribe 3 Smart Pen's about $140. It is right now kind of the king of the hill, right? It records audio. It allows you to do the scrubbing through the notes that we talked about. But you're still writing on paper. And so when you're finished with the notes that you've taken, you can sync them over to your iOS or Android device or your computer and look at them later and archive them and keyword them and all that. And export them into all sorts of different formats. That's really useful stuff. There is a new tool on the market from a competitor, which is crazy because LiveScribe it really sort of corners the market here, from Wacom. And Wacom does they do the digitizing tablets, right? So you plug them into the computer. This is what you see, designers use, and photo retouch artists. They have this tablet that connects to your computer and allows you to work with a pen on your computer as an input device. They're very, very good at what they do. And they have a new tool. It's called the Wacom Bamboo Spark. It has not actually been released yet, but it will be released in a couple of weeks. Right? It's very, very new. It's for $159. It's a folio. It's like a fold-over case. It has paper in it. It has a smart ballpoint pen, and it's the folio that has the intelligence in it. Right? So it's not the pen. So the pen is smart, but it's looks more like a pen. It doesn't have all the smarts in it that the LiveScribe does, so the pen doesn't require sort of larger hands. The LiveScribe pen is pretty big because all the smarts are in the pen. In this case, it's just a small kind of ballpoint pen that tracks on the paper. So you write on a piece of paper, you're writing, taking notes, drawing shapes, et cetera, and then you push a little button on the folio, and the little light changes from blue to green, and that allows you to flip the page. So you move to a new page, start writing again. So every time you turn the page, you hit that little button, and it saves a page. You can save up to 100 pages in its little buffer, so you can write for a long time,
right,
before you then have to sync to the cloud or to Wacom's InkSpace service that allows you to then go download all of your notes to your iPad or your computer. Looks really, really cool. And it's, I like the idea that it's a little bit easier to write. It's got a smaller pen. And so it's something I think to really keep an eye out for. So again, a couple of weeks, $159, Wacom Bamboo Spark. I think it's a perfect tool for the classroom. So I love these two tools because they allow you to really support that, support, save, search, and share feature. But then we come back to the tried and true. Mm-hmm. Your stinking keyboard.
Right.
You just can't go wrong with a keyboard. If you can type, a keyboard addresses so many of these things. And so I have some recommendations for a few keyboards. Keyboard's a keyboard. Logitech kind of corners the market on some of these portable keyboards and keyboard cases. So you can get like a full-size Bluetooth keyboard, that you kind of put in your briefcase or your backpack if you want the full-size experience. Some desks in classrooms are small, but if you're on a table, it's pretty easy to pull out the keyboard. They have I have options in here for both the full-size Bluetooth multi-device keyboard that has a little switch on it, and you can switch between your phone and your tablet. And if you take it back to your computer, or your laptop, you can have the full-size keyboard, and it's connected to all three of your devices, which is nice. They have a similar one that has a solar charger in it, so no batteries. As long as it's in light, it is getting power, and so you never have to charge it. That's pretty handy. The really, really portable keyboards, Logitech has the Keys to Go keyboard. It's rubberized, and so it's safer from the elements. You can spill things on it, get dust in it, it doesn't muck it up. You can just wipe it off. I use personally the Logitech Type Plus keyboard case. It's a bigger case. It's pretty rugged, but I have had some good success with that. And one of the most well-reviewed keyboards on the market is the Microsoft Universal Mobile Keyboard for Windows, Android, iPhone, and iPad. Man, people love this keyboard. I played with it a little bit at Best Buy, and it's great. It's got a really nice touch to it. It seems like a really solid device from Microsoft, so that's one to certainly check out. I think that all of these are great tools for taking notes in class, and the keyboard in particular really assumes kind of a linear approach to note-taking, where you can touch and type and just keep kind of moving through the notes page. I'm still, personally, when I sit down to take notes at a meeting, I am just using my field notes or Moleskine and a pen. Mm-hmm. And I then take pictures of my notes and scan them later into Evernote for review and tagging and filing. So I don't personally, as somebody who has used all of these things in some capacity, even the digital note-taking, digital pens, I still come back to the easiest, most streamlined way to get notes into my computer, which is just write it. Just write it.
And then take a picture of it.
It is absolutely the cheapest way to get notes into your system. Mm-hmm. Finally, we've talked about mind mapping in the past. Now, mind mapping is a different style of note taking. And we may talk about some of these other note taking styles, whether you're looking at sort of the outline format or Cornell method of note taking, but mind mapping is its own unique kind of style and does really merit a different kind of app. And so there are a couple of apps to look at that I recommend. The very favorite is MindNode. It's for iOS and Mac. But it's just beautiful, elegant, and fast. And that's really, really important. If you're on the web all the time, you might check out Coggle.it, COGGLE.IT. Coggle is a mind mapping tool that is beautiful, very smooth. You sign in with your Google or Gmail account, and you're off to the races creating mind maps that allow you to frame your ideas and brainstorm and really good stuff.
I like
what
it.
Do you think?
Again,
what do you think?
You are so full of information.
Well, I'm full of something.
It's crazy. Crazy tech.
How do you take notes? How do you take notes yourself?
Well, I still use pen and paper, or if I am with a client and I'm taking notes, I do it on the computer.
Yeah. This is what I find. And, we talk back to my experience in the classroom. I find students of late We have this new crop of all sorts of digital tools and styluses and new tablets and all these sorts of great things are coming out. And so I'll see students using them for a couple of weeks, and then they will get frustrated, and eventually everybody comes back to paper. Everybody comes back to paper or a keyboard.
Yeah,
Those are the two.
I think your point was well taken earlier when, as a teacher or professor, you get frustrated because you know that the students aren't getting everything that they are supposed to get out of the lecture because they're paying attention to the pen that's not working. And that's exactly what's happening is they're not listening or paying attention or focusing on you. They're trying to figure out how to make all of this work.
Yeah.
So if you're not recording the lecture, you're going to miss half of it. You're going to have to go back. Hopefully, if you are recording it, you can go back and listen to it and figure it out, But still, yeah, I can see great tools, but I can also see how they can kind of lose their shininess appeal as well.
They sure do. And so, I think when you really step back and think about how your brain works, right? The nice thing about pen and paper, whether you're using one of the digital pens or a pen and just plain dumb paper, it allows you to take notes in any style you want. It allows you to be very, very flexible. You don't have to switch apps to go to a mind mapping app. You don't have to switch apps to go to a Cornell method note-taking app. You can just write and draw all over your page, depending on whatever context you might be in. If you need to mind map to do some brainstorming for a group activity, great. You can just do that. You can turn the page and you can come back to Cornell method where you're writing cues and cues and notes and summaries and all of these things you can do quite fluidly. I think the bigger question then becomes, how do you digitize your notes and how do you keep track of them later? Mm-hmm. And I did mention, I have talked so much about ScanBot. I put links to it in the show notes. Again, I'm a huge fan of this little app in terms of being able to quickly digitize and get my notes into Evernote. But, I don't know. I feel like we've talked about that a bunch. I don't mean to kind of give it short shrift, but in our paperless discussion from a little while back, we went into some detail on that. So might be worth reviewing that particular episode.
I like the 4 S's that you brought up too: support, save, search, and share. I think that's a really great way of sort of figuring out if what you're doing is effective. Does it meet those criteria? So I like that. That's good.
Really applies well specifically to digital note taking, but you can embrace and extend that to other areas of figuring out how your ADHD affects you. So super good stuff.
I like it, Pete Wright. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much. It's been another real treat. I like digging into this stuff. Obviously, I get very excited about it. So thank you all for listening and downloading. Again, show notes with links to all of these products and apps are on the website, TakeControlADHD.com. So head over there to check it out. And on behalf of Nikki Kinzer, I'm Pete Wright. We'll catch you next week on Taking Control, the ADHD podcast.